The kiss wasn't romantic, it was a weapon. Eliza Hartwell had exactly 3 seconds to decide: let the stranger die in the alley behind her bookshop, or lie so boldly that even she didn't know if she'd survive it. She chose chaos, grabbed his blood-smeared collar, pressed her mouth to his in front of a crowd that lived for violence and fed on weakness, and when she pulled back, her voice didn't shake. "He's mine. Touch him again, and you deal with me." The debt collectors laughed. The stranger stared at her like she'd lost her mind. She probably had. But if you want to know whether that kiss saved his life, or destroyed hers, stick around until the end. Drop a like and comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain came down in sheets over Ashford Port, turning the cobblestones slick and black, the kind of night where decent people stayed inside and locked their doors. Eliza Hartwell wasn't decent people. She was standing in the doorway of Harrow and Son Books, arms crossed, watching 3 men corner someone in the alley across the street. She should have gone inside. Should have pulled the shutters, pretended she saw nothing. That was how you survived in Ashford. Eyes down, mouth shut, debts paid on time. But she didn't move. The man they'd cornered wasn't fighting back. That caught her attention first. Most people in this part of town came out swinging when the collectors showed up. Desperation made everyone a brawler eventually. But this one just stood there, shoulders straight, face calm, like he was waiting for a carriage instead of a beating. "You've got until I count to 3, one of the collectors said. Big guy, scar down his cheek, voice like gravel in a bucket. "Then we start breaking things." The stranger said something too quiet for Eliza to hear. Scarface didn't like it. His fist came up fast, and Eliza moved faster. She didn't think. Thinking was what got you killed in Ashford. Instinct was cleaner, safer. So she crossed the street in 6 strides, rain soaking through her shawl, and shoved herself between the stranger and the fist that was about to rearrange his face. "He's with me," she said. 3 sets of eyes turned toward her. Scarface lowered his fist slowly. "The hell did you just say?" "I said he's with me." Eliza didn't blink, didn't step back. "So unless you want to explain to your boss why you're hassling my people, I suggest you reconsider." The silence stretched. Rain drummed on the alley walls. Somewhere in the distance, a ship's horn bellowed through the fog. Scarface looked her up and down. "You're Eliza Hartwell. You work at the bookshop." "That's right." "You don't have people." "I do now." One of the other collectors, thin, weaselly eyes too close together, snorted. "She's lying. Look at her. She's nobody." Eliza turned her gaze on him. "Nobody with a very good memory. I remember faces, names, who owes what to who. And I remember you, Lenny Moss, 3 weeks ago, trying to pawn a stolen watch at Fisher's. Want me to keep talking, or are we done here?" Lenny's face went white. Scarface wasn't amused. "This doesn't concern you, girl." "It does now." Eliza glanced at the stranger. He was tall, lean, dark-haired, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not fear, not gratitude, something sharper. "What's his debt?" 40 marks, Scarface said. "And it's overdue." "How overdue?" 3 days. Eliza almost laughed. 3 days wasn't overdue in Ashford. 3 days was a grace period. 3 days meant someone wanted an excuse to make an example. She pulled a pouch from her belt, counted out coins by feel, 20 marks, everything she had left after rent and food, and held them out. "Here's half. I'll cover the rest by Friday." Scarface didn't take the money. "You know this man?" "I do." "You're lying." Eliza's pulse kicked up, but she kept her face blank. "Prove it." For a long moment nobody moved. Then Scarface smiled, slow and mean. "All right, prove you're not lying. If he's yours, show me." "Show you what?" "Kiss him." Eliza's stomach dropped. She hadn't expected that. Stupid. She should have expected that. In Ashford, every bluff got called eventually. She looked at the stranger. He looked back, still calm, still unreadable. And then he did something she didn't expect. He smiled. Barely. Just a slight curve at the corner of his mouth, like he was daring her to follow through. "Fine." Eliza grabbed his collar, yanked him down, and kissed him. It wasn't gentle, wasn't romantic. It was hard and fast and meant to sell the lie, her mouth pressed to his, rain dripping down both their faces. He tasted like copper and rain. His hand came up, hesitated, then settled lightly on her waist, just enough to make it look real. When she pulled back, her heart was pounding so hard she thought the whole alley could hear it. Scarface was grinning. "Well, Hell, maybe you're telling the truth after all. Eliza shoved the coins into his hand. We done? He pocketed the money. For now, but the rest better be here Friday, or I'm coming for both of you. Understood. Scarface jerked his chin at the other two, and they turned, boots splashing through puddles as they disappeared into the rain and fog. Eliza didn't move until they were gone. Then she let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding and turned to the stranger. You're welcome. He tilted his head, studying her. I didn't ask for your help. No, you were just standing there waiting to get your teeth kicked in. I had it handled. Sure you did. Eliza wiped rain off her face. Who the hell are you, anyway? Adrian Cole. And what did you do to owe them 40 marks? I didn't. Eliza blinked. Excuse me? I don't owe them anything. They were mistaken. Mistaken? She stared at him. You let them corner you in an alley over a mistake? I was attempting to resolve it peacefully. Peacefully, Eliza shook her head. You're either the dumbest man I've ever met, or you're lying. Adrian's expression didn't change. Perhaps both. She didn't know what to say to that, so she turned and started walking back toward the bookshop. Wait! She stopped, looked back. Adrian was still standing in the rain, hands in his pockets, looking like he didn't belong here. And that was the thing, wasn't it? He didn't belong. His coat was too fine, his posture too straight, his voice too smooth, no trace of the Ashford drawl that clung to everyone born within 5 miles of the docks. You shouldn't have done that, he said quietly. Probably not. They'll come back for you. I know. Then why did you do it? Eliza shrugged. Because I'm an idiot, and because nobody else was going to. She turned and walked away before he could say anything else. The bookshop was dark and quiet when she slipped inside, rain dripping from her shawl onto the worn floorboards. Eliza locked the door, leaned against it, and closed her eyes. Stupid. Stupid, reckless, idiotic move. She'd just painted a target on her back for a man she didn't know, didn't trust, and definitely didn't know anything to. And for what? A moment of impulse? A flash of anger at the way the world worked, where men like Scarface could corner people in alleys and nobody lifted a finger to stop them. She should have stayed inside. But she hadn't. And now she had until Friday to come up with 20 more marks, or Scarface would make good on his threat. Eliza pushed off the door, lit a lamp, and started counting the day's earnings. 12 marks. Not enough. Not even close. She was still counting when someone knocked on the door. Eliza froze. It was past midnight. Nobody knocked past midnight unless they wanted trouble. Another knock. Louder this time. She grabbed the iron poker from beside the fireplace and crept to the door. We're closed. It's Adrian Cole. Eliza stared at the door. Then she unlocked it, keeping the poker in her other hand, and pulled it open a crack. Adrian stood on the step, soaked through, looking somehow more out of place than he had in the alley. What do you want? To pay you back. Eliza narrowed her eyes. With what? You said you didn't have the 40 marks. I said I didn't owe them 40 marks. I didn't say I didn't have it. He pulled a pouch from his coat and held it out. Eliza opened it, counted. 40 marks. Exactly. She looked up at him. Where did this come from? Does it matter? Yes. Why? Because in Ashford, money like this doesn't just appear. It's stolen or earned doing something dirty or borrowed from someone worse than Scarface. Adrian met her gaze. I worked for it. Doing what? Does it matter? You already asked me that. And you didn't answer. Eliza wanted to throw the money back at him, wanted to slam the door in his face and pretend none of this had happened. But she didn't, because 20 marks would keep her fed for another month, would keep the rent paid, would buy her a little more time before the collectors came for her debts. She pocketed the pouch. Fine, we're even. Not quite. What do you mean? Adrian hesitated. It was the first time she'd seen him look uncertain. I need a favor. Of course he did. What kind of favor? I need someone to teach me. Eliza frowned. Teach you what? To read. She stared at him. You're joking. I'm not. You don't know how to read? I know the basics, but I need to get better, faster. He paused. I'll pay you. Eliza's mind raced. This didn't make sense. The way he spoke, precise, deliberate. No stumbles, no hesitations. That wasn't someone who struggled with reading. That was someone educated, someone who'd had tutors, someone who didn't belong in Ashford. But the money in her pocket was real. And if he wanted to pay her to teach him something he probably already knew, that was his problem, not hers. How much? She asked. 5 marks a week. Eliza nearly choked. 5 marks was what she made in a good month at the bookshop. Why me? Because you're the only person in this city who's helped me without asking for something first. That wasn't true. She had asked for something. She'd asked him to prove he was worth the risk. But she didn't correct him. When do you want to start? Tomorrow night, after the shop closes. Eliza should have said no. Should have told him to find someone else. Someone who didn't have debts and enemies and a life that was already complicated enough without adding a mystery stranger to it. But she didn't. Fine. Tomorrow night. Don't be late. Adrian nodded, turned to leave, then stopped. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You might not like my teaching methods. He smiled, small, genuine, and disappeared into the rain. Eliza shut the door, locked it, and leaned against it again. What the hell had she just agreed to? The next evening, Adrian arrived exactly on time. Eliza had spent the day trying to convince herself to cancel, to tell him she'd changed her mind, to do the smart thing for once in her life. But when he walked through the door, coat dripping rain, she just pointed to the back room. Sit. He sat. Eliza pulled out a stack of books, simple ones, children's primers, novels with large print and easy words, and set them on the table. Where do you want to start? Adrian picked up one of the primers, flipped through it. His eyes moved across the pages too quickly, too smoothly. This one, he said, setting it down. Start here. Eliza watched him. You've read that before? Yes. Then why? I need practice, fluency, speed. For what? Adrian looked at her. Does it matter? There was that phrase again. Eliza sat down across from him. If you're going to lie to me, at least make it interesting. I'm not lying. You're not telling the truth either. Would you, if you were me? Probably not. Adrian smiled. Then we understand each other. They didn't, but Eliza let it go. For the next 2 hours, they worked through the primer. Adrian read aloud, stumbling over words he clearly knew, asking questions about sentence structure that were too advanced for someone who supposedly struggled with reading. Eliza corrected him, pushed him, tested him, and the whole time she watched. He was good at this. Too good. His hands were clean, no calluses, no scars. His clothes were old but well made, the kind of thing that lasted years if you took care of it. His accent slipped sometimes, just a flicker, a word pronounced too crisply, too formally, before he caught himself and smoothed it back into something rougher. He wasn't who he said he was. But then again, in Ashford, nobody ever was. When the clock struck 10, Adrian closed the book. That's enough for tonight. Eliza didn't argue. She was exhausted, and her head was spinning with questions she didn't have answers to. Adrian pulled out 5 marks and set them on the table. Same time tomorrow? Yeah, sure. He stood, hesitated. You didn't have to help me last night. I know. Why did you? Eliza thought about it. About the rain, the alley, the way he'd stood there waiting for violence like it was inevitable. About the look on his face when she'd kissed him. Not surprise, not anger, just curiosity. Because I'm tired of watching people get hurt and doing nothing about it, she said finally. Adrian nodded slowly. I understand that. And for the first time, Eliza thought maybe he did. He left without another word. Eliza locked up, counted the money, and stared at it for a long time. 5 marks. Enough to pay Scarface. Enough to buy groceries. Enough to keep the lights on for another week. Enough to make her wonder what the hell Adrian Cole was really doing in Ashford. Over the next 2 weeks, Adrian came every night. They fell into a rhythm, reading, questions, corrections. He was a fast learner, or at least he pretended to be. Eliza stopped trying to figure out what he was really after and focused on the lessons. But the questions didn't stop. Like the night he asked her about the city's shipping routes. Why do you want to know that? Eliza said, looking up from the ledger she'd been using to teach him numbers. Curiosity. That's not an answer, but it's the only one I have. Eliza set down her pen. You're not from here. No. Where are you from? If you say, does it matter, one more time, I'm going to hit you with this book. Adrian smiled. North. I'm from the north. Where in the north? A small town. You wouldn't know it. Try me. He paused. Graymore. Eliza had never heard of it, but that didn't mean it didn't exist. There were 100 small towns scattered across the northern provinces, most of them too insignificant to show up on any map. And what brings you to Ashford? Work. What kind of work? The kind that pays. Eliza leaned back in her chair. You're infuriating. So I've been told. By who? Adrian's smile faded. People who don't matter anymore. There was something in his voice, something quiet and heavy and final, that made Eliza drop it. They went back to the lesson. But later that night, after Adrian left, Eliza pulled out a map of the northern provinces and looked for Graymore. It didn't exist. She didn't confront him, not yet, because the truth was, she didn't care. Adrian was paying her, showing up on time, and keeping to himself. Whatever secrets he was carrying, they were his problem. At least, that's what she told herself. But then the letters started arriving. The first one came on a Tuesday, slipped under the bookshop door while Eliza was out buying bread. It was sealed with red wax, no markings, no return address. Inside was a single sentence, "Stay away from Adrian Cole." Eliza burned it. The second letter came 3 days later. Same seal, same handwriting. He's not who you think he is. Eliza burned that one too. The third letter was different. It came with a name. Ask him about Hartley Manor. Ask him what he did. Eliza stared at the words for a long time. Then she folded the letter, tucked it into her pocket, and waited for Adrian to arrive. He came at 8, like always. Hung his coat by the door, sat down at the table. Good evening. Eliza didn't return the greeting. She pulled out the letter and set it in front of him. Adrian looked at it, didn't touch it. Who's sending these? Eliza asked. I don't know. That's a lie. It's the truth. Then what's Hartley Manor? Adrian's jaw tightened. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked rattled. It's nothing. It's not nothing if someone's threatening me over it. They're not threatening you. They're trying to scare you. Well, it's working. Eliza leaned forward. Who are you, Adrian? He didn't answer. I've been patient, Eliza said quietly. I've let you lie to me for 2 weeks. I've ignored the fact that you read better than half the scholars in this city. I've ignored the money, the clothes, the way you talk when you think I'm not listening. But I can't ignore this. Adrian stood, walked to the window, stared out at the rain-slicked streets. If I tell you, he said finally, you'll hate me. Maybe, but at least I'll know the truth. He turned to face her, and for the first time Eliza saw something in his eyes that looked like fear. My name isn't Adrian Cole. Eliza's stomach dropped. It's Adrian Ashcroft, Duke of Graymore. The silence that followed was deafening. Eliza stood slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. You're joking. I'm not. You're a duke. Yes. And you've been pretending to be what, exactly? A dock worker? A debtor? An investigator? Eliza laughed. It came out sharp and bitter. An investigator. There's corruption in Ashford, debt schemes, embezzlement, people disappearing. I came here to find out who's responsible. And you thought the best way to do that was to lie to me? I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you the whole truth. That's the same thing. Adrian stepped toward her. Eliza stepped back. I didn't tell you because I didn't know if I could trust you, he said. And because if the wrong people found out who I was, they'd kill me. Or worse, they'd use you to get to me. So you used me first. No, He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. Yes, at first, but not now. I don't believe you. Eliza, get out! Adrian didn't move. I said get out. He picked up his coat, walked to the door, stopped. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Then he was gone. Eliza stood in the empty bookshop, rain drumming on the roof, and tried to remember how to breathe. A duke. She'd kissed a duke. She'd taught a duke how to read. And now she'd just thrown him out. Eliza sat down, put her head in her hands, and laughed until she cried. Because of course this was her life. Adrian didn't come back the next night. Or the night after that. Eliza told herself she didn't care. Told herself it was better this way. He was a liar, a fraud, Someone who'd used her for his own purposes and then expected her to just accept it. But the bookshop felt emptier without him, and the letters kept coming. You should have listened. He'll ruin you. Walk away while you still can. On the fifth night, Eliza cracked. She grabbed her coat, locked up the shop, and went looking for him. She didn't know where he was staying, didn't know where to start. But Ashford wasn't that big, and people talked. It took her less than an hour to find out he'd rented a room above the Anchor and Chain, a grimy tavern near the docks. She climbed the stairs, knocked on his door. No answer. She knocked again. Adrian, open the door. Still nothing. Eliza tried the handle. Unlocked. She pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was small, sparse. A bed, a desk, a single chair. Papers covered the desk, maps and ledgers and documents written in a hand too neat to be Adrian's. Eliza walked over, started reading, and froze. The documents were records, financial records, names, dates, amounts, hundreds of people, thousands, who'd taken out loans they couldn't repay, signed contracts they didn't understand, disappeared when they couldn't pay. And at the center of it all was one name, Councilman Bernard Holt. Eliza's blood ran cold. Holt was one of the most powerful men in Ashford. A council member, a landowner, a man who smiled in public and crushed people in private. If Adrian was investigating him, the door slammed open behind her. Eliza spun. Adrian stood in the doorway, soaked through, breathing hard. What are you doing here? Reading your research. Eliza held up one of the documents. Is this real? Yes. Holt's been running a debt scheme? Not just him. He's part of something bigger, a network. How long have you known? 3 months. Eliza stared at him. And you didn't tell anyone? I'm telling the right people, but I need proof first, real proof. Something that can't be dismissed or buried. And you thought you'd find it here, in Ashford? I know I will. Eliza set down the document. You're going to get yourself killed. Probably. And you're fine with that? Adrian met her eyes. If it stops this, yes. Eliza wanted to yell at him, wanted to shake him, tell him he was an idiot, tell him that noble intentions didn't mean anything if you were dead. But she didn't, because she understood. She understood what it was like to see something wrong and not be able to look away, to want to fix it, even if it cost you everything. I'm not leaving, she said. Adrian blinked. What? You heard me. I'm not walking away. If you're going after Holt, I'm helping. Eliza, you don't tell me I don't understand. I've lived in this city my whole life. I've watched Holt and men like him destroy people. If you've got a way to stop it, I'm in. It's dangerous. I don't care. You should. Well, I don't. Eliza crossed her arms. So either you let me help, or I go to Holt myself and tell him everything. Adrian stared at her. You're bluffing. Try me. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Adrian laughed, quietly, almost disbelieving. You're insane. Probably. He walked over to the desk, picked up one of the ledgers. If we're doing this, you need to understand what we're up against. Holt isn't just a councilman. He's got connections, enforcers, people who will do anything to protect him. I know. And if we fail, we won't. Adrian looked at her. Really looked at her. And Eliza saw something shift in his expression, something like respect, like trust. All right, he said. Let's burn it all down. Eliza smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who'd spent too long watching the world break people and was finally ready to break it back. Where do we start? They started with the ledgers. Adrian spread them across the desk in his rented room, pointing to columns of numbers that didn't add up, names that repeated too often, dates that clustered around specific events. Eliza leaned over his shoulder, squinting at the cramped handwriting, trying to make sense of it all. Here, Adrian said, tapping a page. Thomas Greenlee. Borrowed 50 marks in March. Paid back 70 by May. Then borrowed again in June. Same amount, same terms. So why would someone who just paid off a loan immediately take out another one, especially when the interest rates are designed to bury you? Eliza frowned. Maybe he needed the money. Or maybe he never paid it off in the first place. Maybe the first payment went somewhere else, and the second loan was just a way to keep him on the hook. That's... Eliza stopped, stared at the numbers. That's theft. That's the system. Adrian flipped to another page. And it's not just Greenlee. There are dozens of people in here with the same pattern. Loans that get paid but never close. Debts that multiply instead of shrink. And every single one of them traces back to Holt's office. Eliza straightened. You're saying he's stealing from people who are already drowning. I'm saying he's drowning them on purpose, and then charging them for the privilege. The anger that flared in Eliza's chest was sharp and familiar. She'd seen this her whole life, people working themselves to the bone and still falling further behind, dying with debts their children would inherit. She'd always thought it was just the way things were, inevitable, like the rain or the tide. But it wasn't. It was deliberate. We need proof, she said. Something more than ledgers, something that ties Holt directly to this. I know. That's why I've been watching his office, tracking his meetings, trying to figure out who else is involved. And? Adrian hesitated. There's someone. A woman. She shows up twice a week, always at night, always alone. She carries a lockbox. What's in it? I don't know, but whatever it is, Holt doesn't want anyone seeing it. Eliza's mind raced. We need to get that lockbox. Eliza said, I'm serious. If it's that important, it's evidence, real evidence. And if we get caught, we won't. Adrian looked at her like she'd suggested they set the building on fire. You don't know that. No, but I know that sitting around reading ledgers isn't going to stop him. Eliza crossed her arms. When does she come next? Adrian sighed, rubbed his face. Tomorrow night, around midnight. Then we'll be there. This is insane. You already said that. I'll keep saying it until you start listening. Eliza smiled. I don't listen well. Adrian stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. Quiet, tired, but genuine. I've noticed. They spent the rest of the night planning. Adrian sketched out the layout of Holt's office building, marked the exits, noted the guard rotations. Eliza listened, asked questions, pointed out flaws in his plan. By the time the sky started to lighten, they had something that might work. Might. Eliza left before dawn, slipping back to the bookshop through empty streets. Her hands were shaking. Not from fear, though there was plenty of that, but from something sharper. Anticipation, purpose. For the first time in years, she felt like she was doing something that mattered, even if it got her killed. The day dragged. Eliza tried to focus on work, shelving books, helping customers, pretending everything was normal, but her mind kept drifting to the plan, to the lockbox, to the woman who carried it, to Adrian. She still didn't trust him, not completely. He'd lied to her, used her, kept secrets that could have gotten her killed. But he'd also come back, told her the truth, let her in. That had to count for something. Around midday, a man walked into the bookshop. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a coat too nice for Ashford. He didn't browse, just walked straight to the counter where Eliza was standing. Can I help you? She asked. The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I'm looking for someone. Adrian Cole. I heard he's been spending time here. Eliza's pulse kicked up, but she kept her face blank. Never heard of him. Really? Because I have it on good authority that he's been coming here every night for 2 weeks. Then your authority's wrong. The man leaned against the counter. You know, lying to me isn't a good idea. I'm not someone you want to cross. And I'm not someone who cares. Eliza met his gaze. I don't know anyone named Adrian Cole. Now either buy a book or get out. For a moment, the man didn't move. Then he straightened, smiled again, cold and sharp, and walked out. Eliza waited until he was gone before she let out the breath she'd been holding. That wasn't good. She locked up early, pulled the shutters, and went straight to Adrian's room. He opened the door before she could knock. Someone came looking for you, she said. Adrian's expression darkened. Who? I don't know. Big guy, expensive coat, dead eyes. Said he knew you'd been coming to the bookshop. What did you tell him? That I'd never heard of you. Did he believe you? No. Adrian swore under his breath, pulled her inside and locked the door. This is bad. I figured, if they know I've been seeing you, then they'll come after me. I know. Eliza sat down on the bed. Who was he? Probably one of Holt's men, or someone higher up the chain. There's someone higher than Holt? Adrian nodded grimly. Holt's not running this alone. He's middle management at best. The real power is somewhere else. Where? I don't know yet. That's what I'm trying to find out. Eliza rubbed her temples. So not only are we stealing from a corrupt councilman, we're also poking a hornet's nest we can't even see. Yes. Great. Adrian sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. You can still walk away. I won't blame you. I'm not walking away. Eliza, I said, I'm not walking away. She turned to look at him. I've spent my whole life keeping my head down, staying quiet, playing it safe. And you know what it got me? Nothing. No safety. No security. Just a slow, miserable grind until I die with nothing to show for it. Her voice hardened. So no, I'm not walking away, not from this, not from you. The silence stretched. Then Adrian said very quietly, I don't deserve that. Probably not, but you're stuck with it anyway. He looked at her, really looked at her. And Eliza saw something in his eyes she hadn't seen before, something vulnerable, almost fragile. Thank you, he said. Eliza shrugged. Don't thank me yet. We might both be dead by morning. Adrian smiled. True. They sat there for a while, neither of them speaking, the weight of what they were about to do settling between them like a third presence. Finally, Eliza stood. We should get ready. Adrian nodded. Yeah. They gathered supplies, dark clothes, a pry bar, a length of rope, a knife Eliza kept hidden in her boot. Adrian checked the guard rotation one more time, made sure the exits were clear. Eliza braided her hair back, tucked it under a cap, tried to calm the nervous energy buzzing under her skin. At 11:30, they left. Holt's office was in the Merchant District, a 3-story building wedged between a shipping warehouse and a lawyer's office. The street was quiet, most of the businesses closed for the night, only a few lanterns flickering in windows. Adrian led the way, keeping to the shadows, moving with a confidence that made Eliza think this wasn't his first time breaking into somewhere he shouldn't be. They stopped in an alley across from the building. The woman usually arrives through the side entrance, Adrian whispered. There's a guard posted there, but he takes a break around midnight. That's our window. And if she's early? Then we improvise. Eliza didn't love that answer, but it was too late to back out now. They waited. Midnight came. The guard left his post, disappearing around the corner. Adrian grabbed Eliza's arm, pulled her across the street. They slipped through the side door, unlocked, just like Adrian said it would be, and into a narrow hallway lit by a single flickering lamp. Upstairs, Adrian whispered. 3rd floor. Last door on the left. They climbed the stairs quickly, quietly, every creak of the floorboards making Eliza's heart pound harder. When they reached the 3rd floor, Adrian stopped, listened. Silence. He moved to the door, tried the handle. Locked. Eliza pulled out the pry bar. Move! Adrian stepped aside. Eliza wedged the bar into the door frame, leaned her weight into it. The wood groaned, splintered. The lock gave with a soft crack. They slipped inside. Holt's office was exactly what Eliza expected. Dark wood, leather chairs, bookshelves lined with law texts and financial records. A desk sat in the center, covered in papers, and behind the desk, on a small table, was a lockbox. Eliza crossed the room, picked it up. Heavy, solid, locked. Can you open it? Adrian asked. Not here. We need to take it. If we take it, he'll know someone was here. He'll know anyway. We broke the door. Adrian swore. Fine, take it. But we need to move. Now. Eliza tucked the lockbox under her arm and turned toward the door. And froze. A woman stood in the doorway. Tall, elegant, dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She wore a long coat, gloves, and an expression that could have frozen fire. Well, she said calmly. This is unexpected. Eliza's hand went to the knife in her boot. The woman smiled. I wouldn't. There are 3 guards downstairs who would love an excuse to use their batons tonight. Adrian stepped forward. We don't want trouble. Then you shouldn't have broken into Councilman Holt's office. We're just stealing evidence. Yes, I can see that. The woman's gaze flicked to the lockbox. You must be the Duke of Greymore. I've heard about you. Adrian went very still. The woman's smile widened. Did you think you were being subtle? A nobleman playing dress-up in the slums? It's almost charming. Almost. Who are you? Eliza asked. Someone who's been doing this a lot longer than you. The woman stepped into the room. And someone who's about to give you a choice. Put the lockbox back, walk away, and I'll pretend this never happened. Or keep it, and I'll make sure everyone in Ashford knows exactly who the Duke of Greymore really is. Eliza's grip tightened on the lockbox. You're bluffing. Am I? The woman tilted her head. Try me. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Adrian said, Let us go. The woman laughed. Excuse me? Let us go. We'll take the lockbox, disappear, and you can tell Holt whatever you want. But if you try to stop us, I'll make sure everyone knows you were the one who let us in. That's absurd. Why would I? Because you're not here to deliver that lockbox. You're here to steal from it. Adrian's voice was calm, steady. I've been watching you. You always arrive alone, always at night, always with a key that shouldn't exist. You're skimming, and if Holt finds out, you're dead. The woman's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Something sharp and calculating. You're guessing. Maybe, but you're not willing to bet your life on it. The silence stretched. Then the woman stepped aside. You have 10 minutes. After that, I'm calling the guards. Adrian grabbed Eliza's arm and pulled her toward the door. They ran. Down the stairs, through the hallway, out into the alley. Eliza's lungs burned, her legs screaming, but she didn't slow down. They didn't stop until they were 6 blocks away, hidden in a narrow passage between 2 warehouses. Eliza doubled over, gasping for air. That was insane. Adrian leaned against the wall, breathing hard. It worked. Barely. Barely's enough. Eliza held up the lockbox. Now what? Now we open it. They made their way back to Adrian's room, checking over their shoulders every few steps. Once inside, Adrian locked the door, pulled the curtains, and lit a lamp. Eliza set the lockbox on the desk. Adrian pulled out a thin piece of metal, worked it into the lock. It took him less than a minute to crack it. Inside were documents, contracts, letters, financial records, and at the bottom, a ledger. Adrian flipped it open, read. His face went pale. What? Eliza asked. He turned the ledger toward her. Look. Eliza looked. It was a list of names, hundreds of them. People who'd taken loans, signed contracts, disappeared. But next to each name was another entry. A location, a date, and a single word. Sold. Eliza's stomach turned. They're selling people? Not exactly. They're selling their labor, indenturing them, sending them to work camps, factories, mines, places where they'll never get out. That's... Eliza couldn't find the words. That's slavery. Legally, it's debt repayment. Practically, it's the same thing. Eliza sank into a chair. How many? At least 300, probably more. 300 people, stolen, broken, erased, and Holt was just one piece of it. We need to go public, Eliza said. Take this to the authorities, the press, someone. The authorities are bought. Half of them are on the take, and the press won't touch it without proof they can verify independently. Then what do we do? Adrian closed the ledger. We find the others, the people running this, and we tear the whole thing down. Eliza looked at him. You're talking about a war. I'm talking about justice. Same thing, Adrian smiled grimly. Maybe. Eliza stood, walked to the window, stared out at the city, dark, dangerous, drowning in its own corruption. She thought about the people in that ledger, the ones who'd been taken, the ones who'd never come home. She thought about her own debts, her own struggles, the way she'd spent years pretending the system was broken but survivable. It wasn't. It never had been. All right, she said, let's burn it down. Adrian nodded. Together. Together. They shook on it. A deal sealed not with promises or contracts, but with shared anger and desperate hope. And somewhere in the back of Eliza's mind, a voice whispered that this was the moment everything changed, that there was no going back. She ignored it. Over the next week, they worked. Adrian traced connections, followed leads, pieced together the network. Eliza talked to people, dock workers, shopkeepers, anyone who'd lost someone to the debt schemes. Slowly, the picture came into focus. Holt wasn't the top. He wasn't even close. The real power sat in the governor's office. A man named Victor Carlyle. Wealthy, connected, untouchable. He'd built an empire on the backs of people who had no other choice. And he'd done it so cleanly, so carefully, that no one had ever been able to prove it. Until now. We need to get to him, Adrian said one night, pacing his small room. If we take him down, the whole thing collapses. And how do we do that? He's surrounded by guards, lawyers, politicians. We can't just walk up and accuse him. No, but we can force him into the open. Eliza frowned. How? Adrian stopped pacing, looked at her. There's a gala next week. Carlisle hosts it every year. All the wealthy families, all the councilmen, all the people who keep this system running. If we can get in, we can confront him publicly. Make him respond. That's suicide. Maybe. But it's also the only way to get people's attention. Eliza leaned back in her chair. You're serious? Yes. We'd need invitations, formal clothes, a way past security. I can get us invitations. I still have connections. And the rest? Adrian smiled. We improvise. Eliza wanted to say no, wanted to tell him this was too dangerous, too reckless, too likely to end with both of them dead or worse. But she didn't. Because he was right. If they wanted to stop this, they had to go big, go loud, go public. Fine, she said. But if we're doing this, we're doing it my way. Which is? We don't just confront him, we destroy him in front of everyone. So there's no way he can weasel out of it. Adrian's smile widened. I like the way you think. They spent the next few days preparing. Adrian called in favors, pulled strings, secured 2 invitations to the gala. Eliza borrowed a dress from a friend, dark green, elegant, nothing like the rough clothes she usually wore. Adrian bought a suit, tailored and sharp, the kind of thing that made him look every inch the duke he was. The night before the gala, they met in Adrian's room one last time. Are you sure about this? He asked. Eliza looked at him. No, but I'm doing it anyway. Adrian nodded. Good. They stood there for a moment, the weight of what they were about to do pressing down on both of them. Then Eliza stepped forward and kissed him. It wasn't like the first time. That had been a performance, a lie sold to save his life. This was real. Adrian froze for half a second. Then his hands came up, one settling on her waist, the other tangling in her hair. He kissed her back, slow, careful, like he was afraid she'd disappear if he moved too fast. When they pulled apart, Eliza's heart was pounding. What was that for? Adrian asked quietly. In case we don't make it out alive. He smiled. Fair enough. They didn't talk about it after that. Didn't analyze it. Didn't question it. There wasn't time. The gala was tomorrow. And after that, everything would change. Sick. The night of the gala arrived cold and clear. Eliza stood in front of a cracked mirror, adjusting the dress, trying to recognize herself. She looked different, polished, almost respectable. Almost. Adrian knocked on her door at 7. When she opened it, he stopped, stared. You look uncomfortable? Beautiful. Eliza felt her face heat. Don't. I'm serious. Well, stop. We've got work to do. Adrian smiled, offered his arm. Shall we? Eliza took it. They arrived at the governor's estate just after 8. Carriages lined the drive, guests flowing through the gates in waves of silk and jewels and laughter. Adrian presented their invitations, and the guards waved them through without a second glance. Inside, the mansion was a spectacle. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, music drifting from a string quartet in the corner. Waiters moved through the crowd with trays of champagne. Everywhere Eliza looked, she saw wealth. Ostentatious, careless, obscene. And in the center of it all stood Victor Carlisle. Tall, silver-haired, smiling like a man who owned the world. Because he did. There, Adrian murmured. Eliza nodded. I see him. They moved through the crowd, staying close, staying quiet. Eliza's pulse hammered in her ears. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to get out before someone recognized Adrian, before someone figured out they didn't belong. But she didn't. They reached the edge of the main hall. Carlisle was holding court, surrounded by councilmen and merchants, laughing at some joke Eliza couldn't hear. Now or never, Adrian said. Eliza took a breath. Now. They stepped forward together, and the room went silent. Carlisle's eyes found Adrian first. His smile didn't falter, but something changed in his expression, a flicker of recognition, maybe curiosity. The conversations around them stuttered to a stop, heads turning, whispers starting. Eliza felt exposed under the weight of all those stares. Her dress suddenly felt too tight, too obvious, like a costume that didn't quite fit. But she kept her chin up, her hand steady on Adrian's arm. Ladies and gentlemen, Adrian's voice cut through the murmurs, clear and calm. I apologize for the interruption, but I have something important to discuss with Governor Carlisle. Carlisle set down his champagne glass. Adrian Ashcroft, I wondered when you'd show your face. So he knew. Of course he knew. We need to talk, Adrian said. Then make an appointment. This is hardly the time or place for... You've been trafficking people. Adrian's voice didn't rise, but it carried. Every person in that hall heard it. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. You've been using debt schemes to trap them, then selling their labor to work camps and factories. And you've been doing it for years. The silence that followed was absolute. Carlyle laughed. It sounded genuine, amused even. That's quite an accusation. Do you have any proof? Yes. Adrian pulled the ledger from inside his coat and held it up. The same ledger they'd stolen from Holt's office. The one with names, dates, locations, the one that proved everything. Carlyle's smile thinned. I see. And you think waving a stolen document at a social gathering constitutes evidence? I think 300 missing people constitutes evidence. I think families who've been destroyed, lives that have been erased, debts that multiply instead of shrink, I think all of that constitutes evidence. Hearsay, speculation. Carlyle gestured dismissively. You're a Duke playing detective in a city you don't understand. You've been fed lies by desperate people looking for someone to blame. Then explain the ledger. I don't need to explain anything to you. Adrian stepped closer. The crowd parted slightly, giving them space. Everyone watching like this was theater. You're right. You don't need to explain it to me, but you'll need to explain it to them. He gestured to the crowd, to the councilmen, the merchants, the wealthy families who kept Ashford running, people who benefited from the system, sure, but who maybe, just maybe, didn't know how deep the rot went. Carlyle's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was waiting this long. Guards. 4 men in uniform stepped forward from the edges of the room, big, armed, faces blank. Eliza's hand went to the knife hidden in the folds of her dress. Escort the Duke and his companion out, Carlyle said calmly. They're clearly unwell. The guards moved toward them, and Eliza made a choice. She grabbed the ledger from Adrian's hands, held it high, and shouted, Thomas Greenlee, Margaret Foster, David and Sarah Chen, William Thorne. The guards stopped. Eliza kept going, reading names from memory, names she'd memorized over the past week. Rebecca Hall, James Pritchard, Anna Lowe and her 2 children. Every single one of these people was taken from Ashford. Every single one of them was sold because they couldn't pay debts that were designed to drown them. And every single one of them is in this ledger. Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. Some of you knew them. Some of you worked with them. Some of you probably owe money to the same people who took them. So don't stand there and pretend this doesn't matter. Don't let him sweep this under the rug like it's nothing. The silence shifted, became heavier, uncomfortable. A woman near the back of the crowd spoke up, her voice shaking. My brother, David Chen, he disappeared 6 months ago. They said he ran off, left debts behind. He didn't run, Eliza said. He was taken. Another voice. A man this time. Margaret Foster worked for me. Good woman, reliable. Then one day she just vanished. She didn't vanish. She was sold. More voices now. Murmurs rippling through the crowd. People exchanging glances, putting pieces together, realizing that maybe, just maybe, the system they'd ignored wasn't just broken. It was designed to break people. Carlyle's jaw tightened. This is absurd. You're listening to a bookshop clerk and a disgraced duke who've clearly... I'm not disgraced, Adrian said quietly. Not yet. But you will be. He turned to face the crowd. I came to Ashford 3 months ago because people were disappearing, because the Crown received reports of corruption so deep, so systematic, that entire families were being erased from record. I've spent those 3 months gathering evidence, tracking connections, following the money, and every single thread leads back to one man. He pointed at Carlyle. Governor Victor Carlyle, the man you trust to run this city, the man who smiles and shakes hands and hosts parties while people die in work camps, the man who's built his fortune on stolen lives. Carlyle's face went red. You have no authority here. I'm the Duke of Greymore. I'm a representative of the Crown, and I'm officially charging you with trafficking, fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. The room erupted. Voices overlapping, people shouting questions, guards looking uncertain, Carlyle yelling something Eliza couldn't hear over the noise, and then a gunshot cracked through the air. Everyone froze. Carlyle stood with a pistol in his hand, pointed at the ceiling. Smoke curled from the barrel. His face was calm again, too calm. Enough, he said. The crowd backed away, leaving a wide circle around Adrian and Eliza. Carlyle lowered the pistol, pointed it at Adrian. You want to play noble? Fine. Let's see how noble you are when you're dead. Eliza moved without thinking, stepped in front of Adrian, putting herself between him and the gun. Don't, she said. Carlyle's eyes flicked to her. Move. No. I will shoot you. Then shoot me. But you'll have to do it in front of everyone here, in front of witnesses, in front of people who'll remember. Carlyle's hand didn't waver. You think I care about witnesses? I think you care about control. And the second you pull that trigger, you lose it. For a long moment, nobody breathed. Then Carlyle smiled. You're right. I do care about control. He shifted his aim and shot Adrian anyway. The bullet caught Adrian in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. He hit the floor hard, blood spreading across his white shirt. Eliza screamed. The crowd scattered, people running for the doors, guards shouting, chaos erupting in every direction. Eliza dropped to her knees beside Adrian. His face was pale, teeth clenched, one hand pressed to the wound. Blood seeped between his fingers. You're okay, Eliza said, even though she didn't know if that was true. You're okay. Stay with me. Adrian's eyes found hers on Ledger. What? The Ledger. Don't let him... Eliza looked up. Carlyle was walking toward them, pistol still in hand, boots clicking on the marble floor. The guards had formed a perimeter, keeping the fleeing guests contained. And in Carlyle's other hand, the Ledger. He must have grabbed it when she dropped it. No, Eliza breathed. Carlyle stopped a few feet away. Looked down at them like they were insects. Did you really think this would work? That you could walk into my house, accuse me in front of my people, and just... What? Win? Yes, Adrian rasped. Carlyle laughed, pulled a lighter from his pocket, flicked it open. No! Eliza lunged forward. A guard grabbed her, yanked her back. She fought, kicked, clawed, but he was too strong. Carlyle held the flame to the Ledger. The pages caught quickly, fire spreading across the names, the dates, the proof. There, Carlyle said, watching it burn. Now it's your word against mine, and we both know whose word matters more. He dropped the burning Ledger onto the floor, let it turn to ash. Then he looked at Eliza. As for you, you're nobody, a bookshop clerk with delusions of heroism. You'll disappear, just like all the others, and no one will remember your name. Eliza's vision blurred with rage. You're wrong. Am I? People saw, people heard. You can burn the Ledger, but you can't burn the truth. Carlyle crouched down, getting eye level with her. The truth is whatever I say it is. And right now, the truth is that a disgraced duke and his accomplice broke into my home, made wild accusations, and attacked me when I defended myself. Self-defense. Tragic, really. He stood, raised the pistol again. This time he aimed it at Eliza. Any last words? Eliza met his gaze. Didn't blink. Yeah, you should have checked the Ledger more carefully. Carlyle frowned. What? The one you just burned? That was a copy. We have the original. It was a lie. A complete, desperate lie. But Carlyle didn't know that. His expression shifted, just for a second, doubt flickering across his face. And in that second, Adrian moved. He surged up from the floor, blood-soaked and pale, and drove his shoulder into Carlyle's chest. They both went down, the pistol skittering across the marble. Eliza broke free from the guard, grabbed the gun, spun, and pointed it at Carlyle. Her hands shook. She'd never held a gun before. Didn't know if she could actually pull the trigger. But Carlyle didn't know that either. He froze, hands up, breathing hard. Adrian was on the floor again, clutching his shoulder, blood pooling beneath him. But he was smiling, faintly, like he'd just won something. You're insane, Carlyle said. Probably, Eliza agreed, but I'm also done. She looked at the guards, at the crowd of people still clustered near the doors, watching, waiting. You all heard him, she said loudly. You heard him confess. You saw him burn evidence. You saw him shoot an unarmed man. So now you have a choice. You can let him walk away, pretend this never happened, go back to your lives, or you can stand up and do something about it. Silence. Nobody moved. Eliza's heart sank. And then someone stepped forward, the woman who'd mentioned her brother, David Chen's sister. I'll testify, she said. Another voice. The man who'd known Margaret Foster. Me too. More people stepping forward. One by one. Not everyone. But enough. Enough to matter. Carlisle's face went white. You're finished, Adrian said from the floor. His voice was weak, but steady. Even if you kill us, it won't stop this. Too many people know. Too many people care. Carlisle looked around. At the witnesses, at the guards who were no longer moving to help him, at the burning remains of the ledger that didn't matter anymore because the damage was already done. And then he ran. Bolted for the side door, coat flaring behind him. Stop him, someone shouted. But the guards didn't move. They just stood there, unsure, looking at each other like they didn't know whose orders to follow anymore. Eliza lowered the gun. Let it drop. She didn't care about Carlisle, didn't care if he got away. She only cared about Adrian. She dropped beside him, pressing her hands to the wound in his shoulder. We need a doctor. Now! One of the guards finally moved, running toward the back of the house. Adrian's eyes were half closed. Did we? Yeah, we did. Good. His head fell back and Eliza's panic spiked. Adrian, stay awake. Don't you dare. Not dying, he mumbled. Just tired. That's not funny. Little bit funny. Eliza wanted to hit him, wanted to yell at him for getting shot, for being reckless, for dragging her into this nightmare. But she didn't. She just held pressure on the wound and waited for help to arrive. The doctor came. Stitched Adrian up in one of Carlisle's guest rooms while Eliza paced outside, blood drying on her hands, dress ruined, mind racing. People were still milling around downstairs. Some had left. Others stayed, talking in hushed voices, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. When the doctor finally emerged, Eliza nearly tackled him. He's fine, the doctor said quickly. Lost some blood, but the bullet went clean through. He'll need rest, but he'll live. Eliza's knees almost gave out. Can I see him? 5 minutes? He needs to sleep. She didn't wait for permission, just pushed past the doctor and into the room. Adrian was propped up in bed, shirtless, a thick bandage wrapped around his shoulder. He looked pale, exhausted, but alive. Hey, he said when he saw her. Hey. Eliza sat on the edge of the bed. You're an idiot. I've been told. You could have died. But I didn't. That's not the point. Adrian reached for her hand, held it gently. We won. We almost lost everything. But we didn't. Eliza stared at him, at his stubborn, infuriating face. And then she started crying. Not quiet tears. Full, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. Adrian pulled her closer, awkward with one arm, but steady. It's okay. It's not okay. Nothing about this is okay. Maybe not, but we're alive. And we told the truth. That has to count for something. Eliza wiped her face. What happens now? Now, we rest. Tomorrow, we figure out the next step. And Carlisle? He'll run. But he can't hide forever. Not now. Eliza wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe that this was over, that they'd won, that everything would be fine. But she knew better. This wasn't over. This was just the beginning. 3 days later, the story broke. Not from the Crown, not from the authorities, from the people. David Chen's sister went to the press, told them everything, showed them letters, records, anything she had that proved her brother was taken. Others followed. Margaret Foster's employer, families who'd lost people, workers who'd been threatened. The newspapers ran with it, headlines screaming about corruption, trafficking, the governor who'd betrayed an entire city. And then the Crown got involved. Investigators arrived from the Capitol. Real ones. Not bought, not corrupted, but people who actually cared about finding the truth. They raided Carlisle's offices, seized documents, arrested Holt and half the city council. Carlisle himself was still missing, but warrants were issued, bounties posted. It was only a matter of time. Adrian recovered slowly. The wound healed, but he was different, quieter, more careful. Like getting shot had reminded him that he wasn't invincible. Eliza stayed close, helped him when he needed it, gave him space when he didn't. They didn't talk about the kiss, didn't talk about what happened after all this was over. There was too much else to deal with, like the fact that Adrian's cover was blown. Everyone knew he was the Duke of Greymore now, knew he'd been investigating Carlisle, knew he'd risked everything to expose the truth. Some people called him a hero. Others called him a fool, and a few, mostly the ones who'd benefited from Carlisle's schemes, called him a traitor. One night, a week after the gala, someone threw a brick through the window of Adrian's rented room. Eliza found him the next morning, sweeping up glass. "You need to leave," she said. Adrian didn't look up. "No." "They're going to kill you." "Let them try." "Adrian, I'm not leaving." He finally met her eyes. "Not until this is finished." "It is finished. Carlisle's gone, Holt's in custody, the Crown's investigating. What else is there?" "Justice. Real justice. For the people who were taken. For the families who lost everything." His voice hardened. "I'm not leaving until every single person involved in this is held accountable." Eliza wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he'd done enough, that he didn't owe Ashford anything more. But she understood, because she felt the same way. 2 weeks after the gala, Carlisle was found, trying to board a ship in a port town 300 miles south. The crew turned him in for the bounty. He was brought back to Ashford in chains. The trial was public, held in the city square where everyone could watch. Adrian testified. So did Eliza. So did dozens of others, families, workers, people who'd been trapped in the debt schemes and survived. Carlisle didn't say much, just sat there, expressionless, while the evidence piled up. It took the jury 4 hours to reach a verdict. Guilty. On all counts. The sentence was life in prison. No parole, no appeals. When the judge read the verdict, the crowd erupted. Cheers, shouts, people crying with relief. Eliza stood at the edge of the square, watching. She didn't cheer, didn't cry. She just felt tired. Adrian found her afterward. His arm was still in a sling, but he looked better, stronger. "It's over," he said. "Is it?" "Carlisle's locked up. Holt and the others are facing trial. The work camps are being shut down. The people who were taken, some of them are coming home." "Some. Not all." "No, not all." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Adrian said, "I have to go back." Eliza's chest tightened. "To Graymore?" "Yes. The Crown's calling me back. There's political fallout, things I need to deal with." "When?" "End of the week." Eliza nodded, tried to keep her face neutral. Adrian turned to face her. "Come with me." She blinked. "What?" "Come with me. To Graymore. To the capital." Eliza didn't know what to say. "Why?" "Because I don't want to leave you here. Because you're the reason any of this worked. Because..." He hesitated. "Because I want you there." Eliza's heart was pounding. "Adrian, I'm nobody. I'm a bookshop clerk from Ashford. I don't belong in your world." "My world is broken, full of people who care more about power than people. I don't want to go back to that. But if you're there, maybe it'll be different. Maybe I can actually change something. You're asking me to leave everything. I know. My life is here. I know." Eliza stopped. Thought about it, really thought about it. Her life in Ashford, the bookshop, the debts, the endless grind of survival. And then she thought about the past few weeks, the risk, the danger, the feeling of actually doing something that mattered. "If I come," she said slowly, "I'm not going to be quiet. I'm not going to sit in the background and let people ignore what happened here." Adrian smiled. "I wouldn't expect anything less. And I'm not going to pretend to be someone I'm not. I'm not going to act like a noble or wear fancy dresses every day or Eliza." She stopped. "I don't want you to be anyone but yourself." She stared at him. At this man who'd lied to her, trusted her, nearly died beside her. And then she made her choice. "All right, I'll come." Adrian's smile widened. "Really? Don't make me regret it." He pulled her into a hug, carefully, mindful of his injured shoulder, and Eliza let herself relax into it. For the first time in weeks, she felt like maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. But that night, everything fell apart. Eliza was packing her things at the bookshop when someone knocked on the door. She opened it and found herself staring at a woman she didn't recognize. Tall, elegant, dark hair, familiar somehow. "Can I help you?" The woman smiled. "You must be Eliza Hartwell." "Who's asking?" "My name is Victoria Ashcroft. I'm Adrian's sister." Eliza's stomach dropped. "I need to talk to you," Victoria said, "about my brother, and about what you think you're doing." Eliza didn't step aside. "You can talk from right there." Victoria's smile didn't waver, but her eyes were cold, sharp, the kind of eyes that assessed value and found most things wanting. May I come in? This conversation would be better held in private. I don't know you, so no. Fair enough. Victoria glanced past Eliza into the bookshop, taking in the cramped space, the worn floorboards, the stacks of books that probably hadn't been dusted in months. My brother told me about you, about what you did. Quite brave, really. Foolish, but brave. Get to the point. The point is that Adrian's coming home. Back to Greymore, back to his responsibilities, back to the life he was born into. And you, Victoria's gaze returned to Eliza. You don't belong in that life. Adrian asked me to come with him. Of course he did. He's grateful. You helped him, risked your life, played the hero. But gratitude isn't a foundation for anything lasting. And once he's back home, surrounded by people who actually understand his world, he'll realize that. Eliza's jaw tightened. You don't know what you're talking about, don't I? I know my brother. I know how he thinks. He sees you as a project, someone to save. But once the excitement wears off, once reality sets in, he'll see you for what you are, a distraction. He doesn't think that. He will. Victoria's voice softened, almost kind. Look, I'm not trying to be cruel. I'm trying to save you from embarrassment, from heartbreak. You're a bookshop clerk from a port city. You have no title, no family connections, no training in how to navigate court politics. If you come to Greymore, you'll be eaten alive. Maybe I'm tougher than you think. Maybe, but tough only gets you so far. Victoria pulled an envelope from her coat, set it on the doorframe. That's a bank draft. 50,000 marks. More than enough to start over somewhere new. Buy your own bookshop. Live comfortably. All you have to do is walk away. Eliza stared at the envelope. 50,000 marks. More money than she'd see in 10 lifetimes. You're trying to bribe me. I'm trying to help you and protect my brother. From what? From making a mistake that will ruin his reputation and destroy any chance he has of doing real good in this world. Victoria's voice hardened. Adrian's been reckless, getting involved in this investigation, exposing himself, nearly getting killed. All of it has consequences. The Crown is already questioning his judgment. If he shows up with a commoner on his arm claiming she's, what exactly? His advisor, his companion, his lover? It will confirm every doubt they have about him. That's their problem. No, it's his and yours. Victoria stepped closer. If you care about him at all, you'll let him go. Eliza wanted to slam the door in her face, wanted to tell her to take her money and her condescension and get out. But a small, treacherous voice in the back of her mind whispered that maybe Victoria was right. Maybe Eliza didn't belong in Adrian's world. Maybe she was just fooling herself. I need to think about it, Eliza said quietly. Victoria nodded. Take your time, but decide soon. We leave in 3 days. She turned and walked away, heels clicking on the cobblestones. Eliza shut the door, leaned against it, and stared at the envelope. She didn't tell Adrian about Victoria's visit. Over the next 2 days, she went through the motions, packing, closing up the bookshop, saying goodbye to the few people she knew, but her mind was somewhere else, turning over Victoria's words, the money, the doubts. Adrian came by the night before they were supposed to leave. He looked better, his color back, his arm out of the sling, though he still moved carefully. Ready? He asked. Eliza forced a smile. Almost. He sat down at the small table, watching her fold clothes into a worn bag. You're quiet. Just tired. Eliza. She stopped, met his eyes. What's wrong? He asked. Nothing. That's a lie. Maybe. Adrian stood, walked over to her. Talk to me. Eliza wanted to tell him about Victoria, about the money, about the fear that had been gnawing at her since that conversation, but the words stuck in her throat. Do you really want me to come? She asked instead. Adrian frowned. Of course I do. Why would you? Because I don't fit in your world. You know that. I know that. And sooner or later people are going to make you choose between me and everything else. Then I'll choose you. You say that now, but what about when it costs you your title, your influence, your ability to actually change things? Eliza, I'm serious. What we did here, exposing Carlisle, stopping the trafficking, that mattered. And you did it because you have power. Because people listened to you. But if you lose that power because of me, then what was the point? Adrian was quiet for a moment. Then he said, The point was doing the right thing, not protecting my status. But you can't keep doing the right thing if you don't have status. Maybe. Or maybe I've been thinking about this all wrong. Maybe the system itself is the problem. And maybe instead of trying to work within it, I should be tearing it down. Eliza stared at him. You can't be serious. Why not? You saw what happened here. The people with power used it to destroy lives. And the only reason we stopped them was because we refused to play by their rules. So why go back to Greymore and do the same thing? Why not build something different? Because you're one person. You can't change an entire system. Not alone. But with help? With people like you who actually give a damn? Adrian took her hand. We could do something real. Not just stop one corrupt governor, but change how the whole thing works. That's insane. Probably, but it's also the only thing that makes sense. Eliza wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that they could walk into the lion's den and come out victorious. But she'd learned a long time ago that wanting something didn't make it true. Your sister came to see me, she said. Adrian went still. What? 2 days ago, she offered me money to walk away. How much? 50,000 marks. Adrian's jaw clenched. That sounds like her. She said I'd ruin you, that I'd destroy your reputation and make it impossible for you to do any good. And what did you say? I said I'd think about it. Adrian let go of her hand, stepped back. Are you? Thinking about it? I don't know. Eliza's voice broke. I want to come with you, but I don't want to be the reason you lose everything. You won't be. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise that I'd rather lose everything with you than keep it all without you. Eliza closed her eyes. That's not fair. It's the truth. She opened her eyes, looked at him, really looked at him, at this man who'd walked into her life as a stranger, lied to her, nearly died beside her, and somehow become the one person she trusted more than anyone. If I come, she said slowly, I'm not going to change who I am. I'm not going to bow and scrape and pretend to be something I'm not. I wouldn't want you to. And if people try to push me out, I'll stand with you. Even if it costs you everything, even then. Eliza searched his face for doubt, for hesitation, for any sign that he didn't mean it. She found none. All right, she said. Let's go burn down your world too. Adrian smiled, pulled her close, kissed her, slow and deliberate, like he was sealing a promise. And for the first time in days, Eliza felt like maybe this could actually work. They left Ashford at dawn. A carriage waited outside the bookshop, sleek and expensive, the kind of thing that screamed nobility. Eliza climbed in, bag clutched in her lap, trying not to feel like an imposter. Adrian sat across from her, watching the city disappear through the window. Nervous? He asked. Terrified. Good. That means you're paying attention. The journey to Greymore took 3 days. Long, uncomfortable days rattling over bad roads, stopping at inns that charged too much for terrible food. Eliza spent most of it staring out the window, watching the landscape shift from port cities to farmland to rolling hills. Adrian spent most of it reading letters. Correspondence from the Crown, from his family, from people Eliza didn't know. His expression grew darker with each one. What? Eliza asked on the second day. Adrian looked up. They're not happy. Your family? Everyone. The Crown wants a full report. My family wants me to stop making a spectacle of myself, and half the nobility thinks I've lost my mind. Have you? Probably. Eliza almost smiled. What are you going to tell them? The truth. That corruption isn't just an Ashford problem, that it's everywhere, and that if we don't do something about it, the whole system's going to collapse. And you think they'll listen? No, but I have to try. They arrived in Greymore on the 3rd evening. The city was nothing like Ashford, clean, orderly, built from white stone that gleamed in the fading light. The streets were wide, the buildings tall, everything designed to project power and permanence. Eliza hated it immediately. The Ashcroft estate sat on the edge of the city, surrounded by gates and gardens, and enough land to house half of Ashford's population. The carriage rolled up the drive, and Eliza's stomach twisted into knots. Ready? Adrian asked. No. Me neither. They climbed out. A servant appeared to take their bags. Another led them inside. The entrance hall was massive, marble floors, vaulted ceilings, portraits of stern-faced ancestors lining the walls. Everything was cold, elegant, intimidating. And standing in the center of it all was Victoria. She looked different here, more polished, more dangerous. She smiled when she saw them, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome home, brother." "Victoria." Her gaze shifted to Eliza. "Miss Hartwell, I'm surprised to see you." "I'm full of surprises." "So I'm learning." Victoria's smile sharpened. "Father's waiting in his study. He'd like to speak with you, Adrian. Alone." Adrian glanced at Eliza. "I'll be quick." "Take your time." He disappeared down a hallway. Victoria turned to Eliza. "I meant what I said in Ashford. You don't belong here." "And I meant what I didn't say. I don't care." Victoria's expression didn't change. "You will." "Come, I'll show you to your room." She led Eliza through a maze of hallways, up a grand staircase, into a wing that smelled of lavender and old money. The room she opened was bigger than Eliza's entire bookshop. Four-poster bed, silk curtains, a fireplace that could have roasted a pig. "Dinner's at 8, Victoria said. "Try to dress appropriately." She left before Eliza could respond. Eliza stood in the center of the room, surrounded by luxuries she didn't want and couldn't appreciate, and thought about running. Just leaving. Walking out the front door and never looking back. But she didn't, because she'd promised Adrian she'd stay, and because, deep down, she wanted to prove Victoria wrong. What? Dinner was a nightmare. Eliza sat at a table long enough to seat 20, surrounded by Adrian's family. His father, cold, silent, radiating disapproval. His mother, polite, distant, clearly uncomfortable. Victoria, watching everything with the intensity of a hawk. And two younger siblings Eliza hadn't met, who stared at her like she was a curiosity. Adrian sat beside her, tense but steady. The meal itself was absurd. 7 courses, each more elaborate than the last. Eliza had no idea which fork to use, which glass was for what. She just copied Adrian and hoped nobody noticed. They noticed. "So, Miss Hartwell," Adrian's father said halfway through the 3rd course. "Adrian tells us you worked in a bookshop." "That's right." "And your family? What do they do?" "They're dead." The table went silent. Eliza kept eating. "My parents died when I was 12. Illness. I've been on my own since." Adrian's mother cleared her throat delicately. "How difficult. You must be very resilient." "I survive. That's about it." Another silence. Victoria broke it. "Adrian also tells us you were instrumental in exposing Governor Carlisle's corruption. Quite brave." "It was the right thing to do." "Of course, though one wonders if it was entirely necessary to make such a public spectacle of it. A quieter approach might have achieved the same result with less collateral damage." Eliza set down her fork. "People were dying, being sold, erased. A quiet approach wasn't going to stop that." "Perhaps. But now Adrian's reputation is in question. The Crown is hesitant to trust his judgment, and his actions have put our entire family under scrutiny." Victoria's voice was calm, reasonable. "Surely you can see how that might be problematic." "I can see how it might be inconvenient, but I can't see how it's more important than stopping people from being trafficked." "No one's saying it's more important, but there are ways to achieve justice without what? Without making the people in power uncomfortable? Without forcing them to actually look at what's happening?" Victoria's smile thinned. "Without burning bridges that might have been useful later. If those bridges lead to people like Carlisle, they deserve to burn." Adrian's father slammed his hand on the table. "Enough." Everyone froze. He looked at Eliza. "You're a guest in this house. You will conduct yourself with respect." Eliza met